So, Asha, is the DC Circuit Court of Appeals going to uphold the gag order that was issued by Judge Chutkan in Trump's January 6th case?
Eh, it's complicated. I'm Asha Rangappa. I teach national security law at Yale University. I'm a former FBI special agent, and I'm a legal contributor for ABC News.
And I'm Renato Mariotti. I'm a former federal prosecutor, a practicing lawyer, and a legal analyst.
And we're here to help you understand topics that can't be boiled down into a soundbite or a tweet. So, you were an appellate law clerk, right, Renato?
Yes, so are you.
So was I. So, we listened to a lot of these arguments, and I have to say, I was listening to that oral argument with Trump's lawyers I guess it's a couple weeks ago, and I was cringing. I don't know if you were cringing. It was a cringy time, mainly because for me, the part that I was listening to at length, these judges were very prepared, by the way. I think they really came to the bench, trying to figure out where to draw the line between threats and free speech. But one of the judges kept posing a hypothetical, trying to get them to discern where the boundaries were of their legal argument, because basically Trump is arguing that this is an infringement on his free speech rights. And what they were trying to get Trump's lawyers to acknowledge is, look, if that has to be balanced out, if there's a line that can be crossed that can be restricted, where does that line fall? And he refused to answer.
Okay, I'm gonna be provocative. I think it was a deliberate strategy.
Okay,
Asha. So Chutkan's order as written probably went too far. It was. I don't think it was as carefully drafted as it could have been. And so, as you point out, the Court of Appeals judges were trying to figure out how to refine it, make it a little bit better, make it less objectionable. So that if the Supreme Court ends up reviewing this, they're going to uphold the gag order. And I think Trump's lawyer is like, I'm not going to help you at all. I'm not taking any part in this. I know I'm losing. I know that I'm not going to get this gag order stricken down. I don't want the gag order to be better. I don't want to help you. I don't want to agree to anything. I don't want to concede anything. My view is this gag order is bad, and I'm not going to concede anything or give you anything. That's what I think he was doing.
I think you're right. I just think that, to me, that's kind of another way in which Trump's lawyers are sort of breaking the implicit norms that exist in the legal profession, right? I mean, when you go to an oral argument, you're going to get hard questions. And a part of being a lawyer is to be able to articulate the boundaries of your argument. Like, where does, taken to its logical extreme, where would it go? And for me, what I think was disingenuous is he wasn't making the affirmative argument that free speech always trumps everything. No matter what, like Trump could be threatening everybody and he could, be inciting people and telling them to take up arms and that would be okay. Like he was, and if I would respect it more if he was like that, that's just my argument. I'm a free speech absolutist. He was conceding that yes, there's some world in which, there could be some restrictions, but when pressed on what line would need to be crossed for that to be triggered, he refused to answer. And to me, that is not good lawyering. It's disingenuous lawyering. And I could tell that the judge was getting incredibly frustrated, and I did not blame her. She was getting angry.
Yes. So just so everyone, just to put a finer point on what Asha just said, which I don't disagree with anything you said. I think you're right. Essentially, what Trump's lawyers, I think, were trying to avoid is a line in the opinion that says even the response, the appellants, Trump's lawyers concede, or Trump, even appellant concedes that, X would be constitutional or Y would be constitutional, or, even take, or something like that. And they wanted to avoid that line. So they basically refused to answer the judge's questions. And, one thing you kind of cast it as a norm. I think that's fair to say it is the norm for an appellate lawyer. I want to say to everyone here, although I was an appellate clerk and I've argued a lot of appeals in my career, that's not what I usually choose to specialize in, spend my time on, as appeals. I don't enjoy it as much, but I've done it quite a bit. But I think that maybe what was going on here, Asha, is that most litigants, right? Like, let's say one of our listeners hired me and we were doing an appeal. I would tell the listener, hey, the chances of this case going to the Supreme Court are like zero. Okay. I mean, effectively zero. You can round down to zero because the Supreme Court takes so few cases every year and they meet such specific criteria that the chances that anybody's going to look at this other than this panel of 3 people that are going to be in front of me tomorrow are almost nil. So we have to do everything we can, even though they're hostile to you, even though it looks like we drew a bad panel for us. Like, we got to do whatever we can because this is the only shot we've got. Whereas I think for Trump, it's a different calculus. Trump thinks that his case is going to get in front of this, or his challenge is going to get in front of the Supreme Court. He thinks that's going to be more favorable to him for obvious reasons. And so I think that changes the calculus for his attorneys as well.
Just so we're clear on kind of what the interests are being balanced, Trump has obviously the First Amendment right to speak, but there is an interest, and I don't think it's unusual for this to be protected, an interest on the judiciary's behalf to protect the integrity of the system, to protect their own safety. And so, the absolutist argument, I don't think is going to fly here. There is a line somewhere. The question is where it's drawn. And one thing that I found was really interesting and to me frustrating is that Trump's lawyer kept characterizing the speech that Trump was prohibited from as political speech. And to me, he's kind of subsuming essentially threats as a form of political speech. That's what he was essentially making the argument for implicitly. And I want to highlight that because, we're now at a place where threats and intimidation are a part of Trump's political strategy. That's why he's making the claim that this is political speech. That's how he politics, I guess, and the fact that, we've allowed that and we've kind of put up with it for this long is what is now it's like, I guess the Overton window is what we would call it, is now shifted to bring that bubble of quote unquote protected political speech to include that type of rhetoric.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I'll go a step further and say I think Trump is deliberately speaking in a manner to try to make questionable tactics like intimidation, making it look like political speech. He's trying to meld his political strategy in the election with his legal strategy, which involves like attacking judges and prosecutors and witnesses. And he's trying to make it hard. I mean, I think that's what makes this a little bit challenging for the judges was that Trump has made an issue in the campaign. People like Fonnie Willis and Letitia James and so forth. And so since he's talking about it in the course of his presidential campaign, it creates some plausibility to his argument that it's political speech. Whereas I think it's just a tactic. So I agree with you. One thing I think our listeners may be wondering is like, why are these judges who are appointed by Obama and Biden on the DC Circuit Court of Appeals taking all of this stuff so seriously? And I think you and I've talked about this before, but just in case people haven't listened to other episodes, is because courts are very careful about what's called a prior restraint on speech. They're very careful about judges or anybody telling people that they can't talk about things, particularly about political speech.
Yeah, but I do think that it's fair to emphasize here that this is another area where Trump is a different kind of defendant or being treated as a different kind of defendant because he's also a candidate running for political office. Because if your run-of-the-mill defendant was attacking witnesses, not someone who was not running for office was attacking the law clerk or whatever, I think it would be shut down. And so, it begs the question, like maybe every defendant should just become a political candidate, because then they can say, they can engage in their mob-like behavior and say, hey, this is a part of my political speech and it's protected. I mean, I agree with you that it's a tactic and it's a way that he's weaponizing the political system and his candidacy for office as a shield against the kind of restrictions that would normally apply to any other defendant who would be saying the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. One point I'll make, and I think I was heavily criticized. Got a lot of, and I apologize by the way if anybody is hearing any issues with my voice. I have a sinus infection, so not 100% powering through today. But I'll make the point that I had made, I think, and gotten a lot of criticism for on Twitter, which is from a First Amendment perspective, traditionally it is relevant whether somebody is a political candidate. The context of the speech does matter. And the courts do treat political speech differently than they treat speech about, I don't know, the Powerpuff Girls or G.I. Joe or something like that. Because ultimately, that's what the First Amendment is most tasked with protecting. And so I think Trump was told this by some attorney. And so he's deliberately melding his legal strategy into his political strategy in order to take advantage of that.
I mean, I don't know that it's that new, though. He's been engaging in ad baculum, threats of violence, since 2016, right? I think you're right, though, that he may be doing it more consciously and deliberately against specific people in the judicial system, in this case, to kind of give it more protection. And in fact, to that point, Jack Smith filed kind of supporting evidence of the impact of Trump's speech because he made another, I think, unhinged Truth Social rant. And Jack Smith provided, I think, hundreds of pages of single-spaced evidence of the kinds of threats that were coming to the New York judge and his law clerk, which is a separate case, but as a result of the kinds of things that Trump was saying about them.
Yeah, I do think that's very serious. I have to say, I feel very differently about the New York gag order. I think the New York gag order was very narrowly tailored towards judicial staff, not even the judge, but judicial staff. And I think there's a lot of documentary evidence to back that up. It's the sort of thing that I would usually think a court would uphold. I know it's temporarily stayed, but I would feel very bullish on the chances of that on appeal. I'm also, just to be clear, on the gag order in the DC case that Chutkan put in, I'm bullish on a gag order being upheld. I just don't think it's going to look exactly like the one that Judge Chutkan drew up, because she said he couldn't criticize Jack Smith, and she was sort of vague on some of the language of the order, and that's a problem from a First Amendment perspective. So I think that'll get sharpened.
So where do you think that they will draw the line? How do you think that it could be narrowed in a way that is upheld and also carves out with more specificity what exactly is prohibited?
Whew, that's a good question, and I'm not.
It's complicated.
It's really complicated. There were, by the way, I think I'll just point out, people who are smarter than me at the ACLU and elsewhere who filed briefs that gave suggestions for how to modify the order. And I think Chutkan would have been wise to just adopt some of those to change their position, because they, of course, were opposed to the order. But I think that for me, there's really two main concerns. One is, a lot of the people involved here are public figures, right? Like you talk about Jack Smith, I talk about Jack Smith, people on TV talk about Jack Smith all the time. The idea that like Trump can't talk about Jack Smith is kind of weird. Okay. So I think talking about public figures, I think, should generally be allowed, unless he's talking about their testimony and trying to encourage them to provide specific testimony or something along those lines, or encouraging like what I'll call a true threat against them. Like, not just saying, Jack Smith's an animal or he's whatever he says, but actually saying Jack Smith lives here, or something like that, or we need to punish Jack Smith or something that goes beyond the normal. And I'll just say, as a prosecutor, I have people threaten me all the time. You know what I mean? Like that. I don't really feel like protecting Jack Smith is my number one concern. I would think more about the integrity of the proceedings and the witnesses more than I would be worried about Jack Smith. As somebody who had my life threatened much more seriously than by Trump.
Can I push back with my own provocative take?
Okay. Okay.
Well,
sure.
I think in some ways the idea that Trump is a political candidate ought to slice the other way a little bit as well. In the sense that, yes, Jack Smith is a public figure. You and I talk about Jack Smith. But despite our amazingly loyal and vast following that we have on our podcast, we do not nearly command the kind of influence that Trump does over his, shadow MAGA army that's already gone to battle for him. We don't have the kind of megaphone and platform that he does to, tens of millions of people that are ready to act on his command. And P.S., he has also signaled that he'll exonerate people if he is successful as a candidate. So, in other words, the people listening to, yes, you get threatened, Renato, but I also think that the people threatening you fully understand that, there could be real consequences for that. Whereas when doing it on behalf of Trump, and he's promising already to, for example, pardon the January 6th people, could they legitimately believe that, they could assassinate a judge, they could assassinate a prosecutor, and, when Trump becomes president, he'll just pardon me? And I bet he would, to be quite honest.
Yeah, he probably would.
So, it's like, yes, he is a candidate and he is engaging in political speech, but precisely because he is a candidate and the kind of political speech he's engaging in has much more reach and influence, and we already know that people are much more likely to act on it.
Yeah, I think I don't disagree with anything you said. I think from a First Amendment perspective, that's the sort of argument that's more of a reach for judges, and it'll be interesting to see whether that gets upheld.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's because it's so unique to this specific context, right? And it's kind of a way in which and I've mentioned this in so many other contexts before, that our laws and our jurisprudence are written for the average person and don't contemplate the incredibly unique position that either the president or someone running for president occupies in our life.
And I'll even take it a step further. I agree with you, but I'll take it a step further. The part of the problem is to tailor, let's say, a gag order that fits these unique circumstances requires the court to do something that's, if not unprecedented, certainly far outside the norm, and thus looks like the sort of discrimination against a particular candidate that would reduce faith in the judicial system. And so it's really putting the judges or potentially Supreme Court justices eventually in a very challenging position.
Yeah, it's really, it's sort of a form of asymmetrical warfare that Trump is engaging in. It's like this way in which he actually holds a lot more power because of this unique circumstances and this kind of the way that he's able to weaponize anything that the judiciary does if they were to acknowledge that differential.
I think that's right. I think a lot of our listeners are very frustrated that they feel like the system's unfair and has given a lot of benefit to Trump. I think there's something to that. And I think I would say, I'll take it more broadly, is that people who don't play by the rules and people who try to transgress systems often can get some real advantage from that. And I think Trump does that to the nth degree in a way that no one has ever done in American history. I suspect people will be studying this for hundreds of years to come. And I do think that our system is not very well equipped to stop Trump. And that's why I've always tried to say that I thought the legal system was not the best equipped. The criminal justice system was not the best equipped to handle Trump and the things that Trump did. I appreciate that he's now being he's charged and he's being held accountable and this and that, and we'll see what happens. But I think in part, this podcast is a way of you and I exploring the limitations on what the criminal justice system can do to rein him in.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's basically the last resort. I think of it as the Titanic. You know, the hull had all, like, whatever, 5 or 6 different compartments that were not all supposed to flood. But they did. And I kind of feel like that's where we are is, you know, the first compartment was the Electoral College, and the second compartment was the impeachment process, and the third compartment was maybe the GOP rejecting him and not letting him be a candidate. And so all of those have now flooded. They don't work. And so we're left with this, you know, this last compartment, which may or may not hold up. And if it floods too, then the ship is sinking. So I thought we could switch gears a little bit, Renato, you know, to something more fun, like Elon Musk and the world of social media.
Wow. I don't know what's more fun, Donald Trump or Elon Musk. Okay.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm going to plug a little book from my friend, Ben Mesrich, who just wrote a book called Breaking Twitter. I'm excited to read it. It's basically about how Elon Musk has suffered a complete psychological meltdown since taking over Twitter.
Wow. Free unpaid sponsorship there. Okay.
I know. I should.
Come on.
Yeah, but they're actually personal friends of mine.
You're
up
supposed
in
to be
Vermont,
hacking like Magic Mind or whatever, you know, whatever our thing is.
I know.
Okay, I'm just teasing.
I know. But yeah, but I am excited to read that book because, you know, I have more or less left Twitter. I mean, my account is still there, but it's just become such a cesspool. And some of the consequences of it becoming a cesspool are that, you know, there's a lot of hateful content on there. There's a lot of accounts that have been reinstated, neo-Nazi accounts, and, you know, ones that are spewing racist and anti-Semitic rhetoric. So basically, a couple weeks ago, Media Matters, which is a nonprofit, published an article that said, hey, look, all these big corporations, their ads are running alongside these neo-Nazi accounts. I wonder if they know that or if they're happy with that. And then as a result of that article, many of these big corporations pulled their advertising from X, including like IBM and Apple. And Musk lost his mind and he sued them. And I decided this weekend to take a look at the lawsuit, and it seems pretty thin, but I can describe it for you and you can give me your thoughts.
Okay, this is good because I will tell you I looked at it and I'm like, wow, this really sucks. And that was my tweet. I think it was like, boy, this is just garbage lawsuit. Okay, let's hear it. What is this? This is in Texas, right?
It's filed in Texas, and instead of, so X is based in California. Media Matters is in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
What do Washington, D.C. and California have in common, Renato?
They're not Texas.
Right. And what advantage does Texas have?
Well, Ken Paxton and his pals, which I think helped Donald Trump, not only helped Donald Trump, but it helped Elon Musk with this, are based in Texas. And they've got various right-wing judges. Haven't we talked about these very special judicial, these special districts where you can basically pick your judge?
Yes. And Texas is a favorite venue. And also, Texas doesn't have anti-SLAPP laws.
Yeah, very weak, yeah.
Yeah, which essentially penalize, I think, frivolous litigation. And California has those kinds of laws that would make it potentially expensive for Musk to, and I think DC also, to file a legally frivolous claim.
Just so people understand what that is, it's in the First Amendment context. If you're public, you know, if if you file, let's say, a defamation lawsuit against me and Asha, please don't. But if you do, just the mere fact of the lawsuit is costs us money and time and is an annoyance, and we have to hire lawyers and so on. And so, in a lot of jurisdictions like California, like you said, there are laws, anti-SLAPP laws, that essentially transfer those costs back to the person who filed the frivolous lawsuit. And so filing in Texas had some real benefits for them.
Yes, and it did land in front of a Trump-appointed judge, Mark Pittman, who has advanced some other, I guess, novel interpretations of the law. So he struck down a Texas law that barred people under 21 from owning handguns because he said that age restrictions like that are unconstitutional under the Second Amendment. So he's ready to, I guess, basically change the meaning of the Constitution. So in this context, maybe he will entertain the claims more than another venue would. But basically, Musk is alleging business disparagement, which is essentially like corporate defamation, and tortious interference of contract by Media Matters publishing this article. And what they claim is that Media Matters, the claims that Media Matters made were false because Media Matters said that X was placing the ads alongside these contents. And in reality, according to X, the reason that these ads appeared next to this content is because Media Matters was using an account that specifically followed only racist and anti-Semitic accounts and only corporate accounts. And as a result, the algorithm, decided that this is what this user wanted to see. So I suppose that could be true, but it doesn't change the fact that as a result, its algorithm did produce those juxtapositions.
Yes. One thing I'm going to just point out that, kind of goes to our theme that we talked about in the last segment is one unfair thing about life is that if you can progress it to past a certain point in a lawsuit, it can impose increasing penalties to the other side. And so this judge that you talked about, even if he ultimately doesn't rule in favor, even if this case never gets to trial, just merely forcing the Media Matters to go through discovery or something could be very expensive, time-consuming process. But I will just say the tortious interference is very bizarre. Tortious interference with the contract is usually like, I know that these two parties are in a contract and I do something to try to like interfere or keep, destroy that relationship in some way. Here it's just mere speech that was publicly made. I mean, it wasn't like directed specifically, right? It's not like they sent a letter.
There wasn't
to Apple.
like a direct interference or intentionality to try to prevent these specific advertisers from fulfilling their end of the contract with X. So yeah, to me, that tortious interference has a much higher bar than the facts would substantiate here. The business disparagement, it's similar to, I think, individual defamation claim in that, you make a false statement with actual malice. I think actual malice is required, and then it results in economic harm to the plaintiff. And I think, and like with defamation, truth is a defense. So again, I think that the piece here that what they said, that these ads ran alongside these accounts, is actually true. I mean, Musk's own complaint concedes that.
Right. Their defense is going to be right that this is absolutely true, and that even if there's some nuanced way in which X or Twitter or whatever can argue that it wasn't true, then there's no actual malice because that's their genuine understanding of how it worked or what they meant, even if they were misunderstood by others. And then as to the tortious interference one, like I said, I actually think there is maybe a First Amendment. We talked a little bit earlier today, Ash, about a First Amendment issue. I think there may be a First Amendment issue there. Like that interpretation of tortious interference, if like every time you speak, you have to consider how that speech might impact everyone's contracts around the world. Like that's probably not gonna stand up. So I guess I view this lawsuit not to be that different from a lot of the Trump lawsuits where the point was just to get a headline. I think that, Trump, that Musk was saying, it's this thermonuclear lawsuit and yada, yada. And they're trumpeting some of the claims there. I think it was their attempt to sort of just shock and awe people or wow them. And I do think it was also meant to harass and put some monetary disincentive on Media Matters and basically send a message to other journalists that if you write about the platform that we'll sue you. I also think it really shows and demonstrates the alliance between the Trumpist MAGA crowd and Elon Musk, who, let's face it, he's in trouble right now in large part because he's been promoting anti-Semitism. I mean, I don't think we should mince words about that. He's anti-Semitic. He is promoting anti-Semitic views, and advertisers like, we want nothing to do with this. I think that's his latest problem, and that crowd is okay with it because he's giving them the MAGA crowd's okay with it because he's giving them a platform, and they don't have that same reaction to that speech that you and I do.
Yeah, you made a number of really important points, and yeah, I do think it's worth emphasizing that Elon Musk himself has endorsed or amplified anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. So it's not just that these accounts happen to be on the platform he owns and Media Matters did this. They highlight that he himself has helped amplify things, including, for example, a conspiracy theory of a 22-year-old Jewish man who was accused of being a neo-Nazi. And as soon as Musk got involved and amplified that, like this man got threats and, all kinds of horrible things happening to him. And then the second part about the kind of lockstep maneuvering between Elon Musk and, GOP officials. We've seen this before with the Twitter files where Elon Musk served up kind of very selective files from internal information that substantiated these conservative talking points. And again, here, as you noted, as soon as Musk, announced that he's suing, Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, and the Attorney General of Missouri got on board and said, we're going to sue Media Matters too. And of course, Elon Musk's tweets to them, great. So it's just this weird collusion. And I think you're right that the goal here is to chill speech, among other things. But I do think that also the discovery process isn't going to be very good for Elon Musk, because if this were to proceed to discovery, then I assume Media Matters would be able to get a lot of information about how Musk's algorithm works, or X's algorithm works, as a part of what the claim is. And I don't know that that's something that X would want to divulge.
Yeah, I agree with that, but it's so expensive. I mean, if I was representing Media Matters, I would tell them, look, our goal here is one of attrition. We're going to try to push off this lawsuit for as long as possible. We're not going to do this quickly. We're going to spend as little money as possible and wait this guy out. He's going to find some other shiny object to get upset about.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's going to get mad at Jewish people again, or whatever his latest thing of the day is, some other group that he's going to insult. And then he'll find some other shiny toy, and he will decide he doesn't want to continue to pursue us, because it could cost millions and millions of dollars in legal fees to go through discovery process here. And any of that stuff, yes, they could find all that stuff out, but it would be protected by either protective order or attorney's eyes only or something along those lines. And like at the end of the day, Media Matters wants to keep publishing stuff, right? I mean, they're not in the business of lawsuits. They're there to keep publishing articles. And so they want this to not be a distraction. And I really do think it is a distraction and a deterrent to speech. And it's the sort of thing that if conservatives were actually, I say conservatives, I don't even like the term anymore because I don't think there's anything conservative
I
about
know,
this
me
MAGA.
neither.
Sorry. About this MAGA. There's nothing conservative about this MAGA stuff at all. But I think if they had any principles, they would be against this as well and condemning it.
Yeah. Well, maybe X will go bankrupt before anything further happens.
Oh my God. It's something you and I didn't you and I cry about this at one point or mourn the loss of Twitter because you and I think gained a lot from
Yeah.
it and had a
Yeah.
great community there. It's very sad.
Yeah. It's sad. It's sad to see what it's become.
So before we go, I don't know about you, Asha, but Thanksgiving was really something at our house. We had a lot of people there. And, last time you told me, you're like, when are you going to put up Christmas decorations? I'm like, oh, usually the day after. My wife could not contain herself. So our house got all Christmased up the day before Thanksgiving. In fact, she talked me into, we went to like all these stores, Home Depot and Lowe's and all these places. And I bought a 50 something dollar humongous Santa that's basically her size that she's just super excited about. My stepdaughter finds it creepy, scary. It's like a creepy.
Where is this Santa located? On your front lawn?
He's near the Christmas tree.
Inside your house?
Yes, he's in our home. And my wife's like, do you want to buy all these outdoor things where it's like these plastic mice and plastic carolers and stuff? I'm like, well, we already have a deer that we purchased this last week. I'm like, we can purchase something indoor. I knew she liked it, but it's something. So we're super Christmas in my household right now. We're very Christmassy.
I feel like a good use for the Santa at other times of the year would be you could position it like near the window and kind of backlight it so that, like if you go away on vacation, like people think that there's a large man at home.
We could use it to scare the teenager as well, like someone's watching.
Yeah, I'm just saying it could be a good like home security type of system.
There you go. We also Henry got a Thanksgiving turkey toy, which is completely destroyed already. There's nothing left of the turkey. May it rest in peace. But he also has a Hanukkah toy, which I refuse to play tug of war with. We only do fetch because it's very cute Hanukkah coffee cup thing. So there you go. Henry's very festive too.
Well, my Thanksgiving was pretty good. I felt like I got a lot of stuff done that I had been meaning to do. That Thanksgiving Day, we went to a couple of different places, celebrated with a friend, and then my boyfriend's family. I have to say my children were kind of annoyed with me because they wanted to go to their high school football game, which I was like, why is a high school having a football game on Thanksgiving Day? Like this feels inappropriate to me.
Yep.
Anyway, but aside from that, it was really good. And I did get my Christmas tree up, though it's not decorated yet. Pancake is exploring and plotting, I think, how to bring the tree down. So we'll have to see. I'm pretty sure it's secure, but I'm not sure. And otherwise, I got my office finally set up. And speaking of pancake and plants, I wanted to get a plant for my office. And I went to IKEA and was looking at all these great plants, but everything I looked at was poisonous for dogs and cats.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Everything I looked at, I would Google it and it would say, this is toxic to dogs and cats. And I know the pancake was going to try to eat the plant. So I ended up getting a fake plant. No Wow. I have a wreath up on my front door. No Christmas stuff on my lawn or anything. I'm not really into the lawn stuff. But one suggestion I have, if you want to buy other stuff, is just wait till the day after Christmas because everything goes on sale. Then you have it for next year.
Wow, I don't know if I could convince my wife to do that. I mean, we've got to be super festive, and we are actually going on a vacation in December. Hopefully,
Ooh, where?
If we're going to St. Lucia
Oh.
to a resort that's like a wellness resort.
Oh.
One of these places where you get a lot of massages
Oh.
and
Oh.
yoga
Will you
and
send me
whatever.
information on
You
that?
know what I mean? Sure. Very relaxing. That's what I need this
Yeah.
year. So we'll be home for Christmas, but just barely. So like, Christmas will have to be my mom's this year.
Awesome.
MSW Media.